buttercup, you're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall, won't stop till I get enough.
Ready to jump into the deep end of U.S. politics and race relations.
Let's do it.
All right, so we're going deep on this interview with Tim Wise, the anti-racist educator.
Yeah.
It's from Hard Knock Radio, and it's a wild ride, let me tell you.
It doesn't hold back.
No, he does not. But he's got this idea that I think is worth unpacking. He keeps talking about America the noun versus America the verb.
Yeah. It's a really catchy way to put it, right? At first, I was like, okay, where's he going with this? But then it clicked.
So break it down for us. What's he getting at?
Well, think of America the noun as that like picture-perfect ideal, you know?
Yeah.
Equality, opportunity, justice for all.
Right.
The dream we sell ourselves, right?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Exactly. But then there's America the verb, what we actually do, how we act, how things actually play out.
And those two don't always line up, do they?
Not even close. And you see that tension throughout our history, right?
Yeah.
These waves of progress followed by like these huge backlashes.
It's like we take 2 steps forward and then get yanked back 1.
It's exhausting. And Wise says this isn't just random,
Oh, interesting.
He sees it as this pattern baked into American history. He actually compares the Obama years to like an intermission in a play.
Whoa, okay.
It's like we had this little break, a moment of, hey, maybe things are changing, and then bam, the curtain rises and we're back to the same old drama.
So what is that main act that we keep returning to, according to Wise?
Well, he's not shy about it, is he? He says racism and misogyny, especially in the rise of the MAGA movement.
He really doesn't mince words, does he?
Nope. He says those are the core drivers. He's got this analogy, I love it. He says, without the yeast, it's not bread, it's a cracker.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Really makes you think.
It does.
Yeah.
But it also raises a question, doesn't it? Like, if MAGA is so rooted in this white grievance thing, how do we explain the support it gets from some minority groups?
Right.
Like you see it in certain Latino communities, even some Asian American groups. It seems like, I don't know, counterintuitive.
Totally. And that's where Wise's take gets super interesting. He suggests it might be about proximity to power, Like if you feel marginalized, maybe aligning with a movement like that feels like a way to be closer to the top than the bottom.
So it's like a survival tactic almost.
Yeah, you could see it that way. And it's not unique to America, really. You look at immigrant groups throughout history, it's a common pattern.
Makes you wonder about the compromises people feel forced to make.
Yeah, definitely.
But Wise also has some thoughts about the Democrats, especially how they're handling media and communication.
Oh, yeah, he goes there.
Big time. He calls them out for, like, clinging to those old school outlets while Republicans are dominating podcasts, social media.
He says Democrats are playing in the wrong sandbox.
Exactly. But he takes it even further.
Oh, yeah.
He says those online spaces, those podcasts and all that, are often full of exactly the stuff that fuels MAGA.
The male grievance, the misogyny, the casual racism, all the conspiracy theories.
That's the quote right there. And because Democrats aren't really engaging in those spaces,
they're letting those ideas fester.
Exactly. Which brings us to one of the most challenging things Wise talks about. Whiteness as a shape-shifting project.
Whoa. Yeah, that one's a head-scratcher at first.
Big time. So it's not just about skin color. Right?
No, it's deeper than that. He's saying that in America, whiteness is less of a fixed identity and more of a tool.
A tool for what?
For keeping power and control.
Yeah.
And who's included, who's excluded, it changes over time. It's fluid.
Okay, but give me an example. How does that work in the real world?
All right, think of someone like Nick Fuentes, the commentator,
Yeah.
He's Latino, but his whole ideology is white supremacy. Wise uses him as an example of how whiteness can expand to include anyone who upholds those power structures.
So it's not about who you are, it's about what you do.
And what you believe.
Man, that's a whole new way of looking at things.
It is, and it forces us to think beyond these simple us versus them categories.
It's like we need to rewire our brains after this interview.
Right.
Let's take a pause here, let all that sink in.
Good idea. I don't know about you, but all this talk about America's like deep-seated patterns.
It's heavy stuff.
Yeah. It's like, are we really stuck in this loop of progress and backlash forever?
Makes you wonder if real change is even possible.
Right.
But Wise is pretty clear that we have to organize and fight.
He is.
But that's where I get a little lost, to be honest.
Yeah.
What does that look like, What does effective fighting even mean in this context?
It's a good question, especially when he's laid out all these forces that seem so, ingrained.
Exactly.
I don't think Wise pretends to have all the answers,
No.
but I do think he gives us some clues, some ways to maybe think about this fight differently.
Okay, I like that. So give me some clues. What stands out to you?
Well, he keeps coming back to this idea of cultural competency.
Okay, yeah.
He's basically saying, look, if you want to make real change,
You can't just preach to the choir.
you got to meet people where they are.
Not where you wish they were.
Right. And he uses these examples like sports and music.
Which some folks on the left.
Dismiss. Or even demonize.
But for a lot of working class people, especially, those things are huge.
The part of their identity.
Part of their community.
And if we're just like,
Your culture is wrong.
you shouldn't enjoy that.
We're shutting them out.
We're saying we don't get you. We're not on your side.
And then who steps in?
Right.
With their...
Simple answers.
But they're speaking a language that resonates.
That connects with those anxieties and frustrations.
Makes you wonder if part of the fight is about language.
Yeah.
Like reclaiming the language.
Finding ways to connect our values.
To the things people actually care about.
It's not about...
Pandering.
Right?
It's about authenticity.
Building those bridges across cultural divides.
Because at the end of the day...
we all want a better future.
Right. Even if we don't agree on how to get there.
Exactly. I think what Wise is saying is...
we need to think bigger.
more strategically.
This isn't just about...
winning elections.
or being clever on Twitter.
It's about shifting the whole cultural landscape.
Which means...
understanding the power of narratives.
of the stories we tell ourselves about who we are.
Because if you want to change America the verb...
you got to change the story of America the noun.
that's where it starts. And that means, I think, being honest about the forces we're up against.
Like Wise does when he talks about racism and misogyny.
Yeah. We can't pretend those things aren't real.
Not if we want to counter them.
And he challenges us to think differently about media, too.
It's not just about having the right message.
You have to get it to the right people.
In the right way.
And Wise points out, while Democrats are sticking to these traditional outlets...
Republicans are building their audiences.
in these online spaces...
where those harmful narratives are spreading like wildfire.
So maybe part of this fight means getting comfortable...
being in those spaces.
engaging with those audiences.
Even if it's messy. Uncomfortable.
Because it's about meeting people where they are.
Not where we wish they were.
Mm.
And maybe that means having
tough culture.
challenging those narratives head on.
And that brings us back to whiteness as a shape-shifting project, right?
Yeah, that's a tough one.
It is. But it's not about making anyone feel guilty.
Right.
It's about understanding how this idea of whiteness...
it's been used to create these
systems of power and privilege...
and they're adaptable.
they can change, evolve, to protect those power structures.
Like,
An exclusive club.
yeah.
The membership rules might change, but the goal stays the same.
Keep the power where it is.
So how do we disrupt that?
Big question.
Yeah.
How do we challenge that without getting sucked into the game?
Well, that's where things get really tricky. Because this isn't just about...
individual actions?
it's about dismantling these huge structures.
So what do we do?
I think it starts with awareness.
Okay.
Who benefits from the way things are?
Who gets left out?
And how can we use our own positions to challenge that?
So it's not just about these big sweeping changes.
It's about the everyday stuff.
The small acts of resistance.
Speaking up.
Pushing back.
Because those small actions, multiplied by millions of people...
that's where real change comes from.
So let's recap. Wise has given us this framework, right?
For understanding how American politics works.
The forces driving it.
The challenges we face in creating a better society.
He's challenged us to
think critically
about our own roles in
Right.
these systems. And he leaves us with this big question. How do we fight?
And maybe the answer is...
it's not one big strategy.
it's a million little things.
Conversations.
Challenging those narratives.
Building those bridges.
This isn't a sprint, it's a marathon.
It's going to take all of us working together.
To create an America that actually lives up to its ideals.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one of the things that really struck me about Wise is he doesn't just, diagnose the problem.
Yeah.
He actually offers some ideas for how to move forward. Yeah, he does.
And he really pushes progressives, especially, to think differently about culture.
Way differently.
He's like, stop talking down to people.
Stop acting like you're better than them.
Meet them where they are.
And he brings up these examples,
In
right?
sports, music.
Some people on the left are just like...
ugh, those are distractions.
or even, harmful.
Yeah.
But Wise is saying...
those things are important to people.
they matter. Especially for working class folks.
They're part of their lives.
They're communities.
So if we're just dismissing that,
We're dismissing them.
basically saying,
Their way of life is wrong.
and then people are like,
Well, fine, I'll find someone who gets me.
and that's where the right comes in, right?
They might not have the best answers.
But they're speaking a language that people understand.
They're tapping into those anxieties, those frustrations.
So maybe part of the challenge for progressives is
To connect on that level.
find a way to talk about our values.
In a way that resonates. That makes sense to people who might not agree with us on everything.
It's not about abandoning our principles.
It's about finding a new language
A new way to express them,
so that people feel seen,
heard.
understood.
And maybe that requires some humility, you know?
Yeah.
Being willing to step outside our bubble.
Talk to people who see the world differently.
Because we can all learn from each other.
All right, so as we wrap up this deep dive into Tim Wise,
What are the big takeaways here?
what should we be thinking about as we walk away from this conversation?
Well, for me, it's about being more aware
Of the patterns,
the forces,
the stories that are shaping our politics,
and being willing to challenge our own assumptions
our biases,
and finding those points of connection.
building bridges across those divides.
Yet it's easy to feel overwhelmed.
Like it's all too much,
But we all have a role to play.
no matter how small.
It's about asking those tough questions
Having those uncomfortable conversations.
and never stop learning.
Never stop growing.
Because ultimately,
The future of America, the noun.
that vision of a just and equitable society
It depends on what we do,
on America, the verb,
the actions we take.
the choices we make.
So as you go about your day,
Look for those moments where those two things don't line up
where America, the verb, falls short of America, the noun.
and ask yourself,
What can I do
even in a small way,
to close that gap?
remember,
You're not alone in this.
there are so many people out there working for a better world.
Find them,
Support them.
and let's build that better future together.
That's it for this deep dive.
We hope you found it insightful.
And inspiring.
Be sure to check out Tim Wise's work if you want to dig deeper.
And until next time.
Keep diving deep and keep fighting for a better world.
Sound the alarm. I'm coming up. We'll have a ball. I'm sweet like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.